For the next 2 weeks, the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change will hold its 21st Convention of the Parties, or COP21, Nick. And this is the moment where we have 200 different countries trying to agree on the very first universal climate agreement, a way where we're going to push the economy as a whole, a global economy, into a cleaner way. And we had the presidents of many of these countries come together and address the negotiators, trying to bring optimism and good faith into the discussion, but also new ideas. And it's very, very important because we know that we need to stop. What at the core of these talks, at this summit, we have a graphic. We show what we want to prevent. We want to prevent the global warming, and we want to reach a goal of 2 Celsius degree increase in temperature in the planet by 2100. So this is very important. If we keep doing business as usual, we'll raise 4 degrees. And this immediately refers to rising sea levels, drought, climate change, as we know, that is affecting the country already.
Yeah, pardon me. Like you said, the first universal talks being held. I mean, we've seen countries come together like this in Kyoto and Copenhagen in the past, but people seem to have more faith in this one.
Yes.
I think, here's another one, I'm a little skeptical. I'm not really sure what's going to come from all this. But although this does show, in a way, the willingness of all these countries to come together, and I think that's great. It also shows how bad things have gotten or how bad they might get. It's cool to see all these different leaders coming together. Meanwhile, I immediately think, man, how are they all going to come together? Yet, here in the U.S., we can't even get political parties to decide whether climate change is even happening at all.
Exactly. Well, this is exactly what they're saying. The World Resource Institute, they're doing a coverage of the whole event, and they're bringing that critical voice because these presidents come forward. One of the first ones that came forward was President Barack Obama, and he said, we are recognizing how strong our contribution to climate change really is. We know that we're the second offender in the list of greenhouse emissions and damage to the planet, so we will take responsibility on that. He talked about creating adaptation investment funds where we are already investing in research and the ways we're going to adapt to this rising climate and the global warming. Now, we see that for every president that comes forward and is very optimistic and creates this idea that we're going to be making it, we do have to come back to the science and say, we've done this in the past. Like you mentioned, Kyoto, we had an agreement, decades-old agreement, nothing happened. Why? Because China and the U.S., the biggest offenders in the globe, are not doing their part. Finally, both President Xi Jinping and President Barack Obama seem to be completely committed to changing the way their economies are based off, moving away from coal and carbon-based economies into a cleaner future.
Right, and sometimes people will say China is the worst offenders, they're the worst by far, their dependence on coal. But at the same time, though, we have to take a minute and think, well, all those factories that are going on in China, who are these factories supplying? We're the hungry market here. So directly, we are huge polluters, but we have to keep in mind indirectly as well. Yeah,
German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she went one step above and she said, we need to make sure that we have to create a long-term global agreement to move completely off carbon. Yeah. Our economy by 2100 needs to be completely carbon zero, which is a hefty goal if you think of how many economies around the world are still relying on carbon fuels to move their economies forward. But also, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, had very positive words saying what they've done domestically to curb global warming, but also showing that in these talks, like President Obama addressed the community, is more about unity and being together than any of the other global issues that are dividing the planet right now.
A big difference from if you listen to Prime Minister David Cameron's speech, which was actually apocalyptic. He was scaring the crap out of everybody. So big difference. It's cool to see all these different leaders come together and have a different approach on how they think we should tackle this issue.
Yes, well, for the next 2 weeks, 200 different countries will negotiate the very first universal climate agreement, trying to prevent rising temperatures from going 2 Celsius degrees up in the next 90 years.